Is there anybody else in our group here who would like to come forward and share a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just don't want to see the deficit reduction. I just don't want to see the deficit reduction, shouldered by the elderly, the young children, the disabled, everybody else that depends upon Social Security or Medicare, Medicaid. That's just not right as far as I'm concerned, for us to shoulder that burden, where, the 1% or the 5%, it looks to me like they're going to get off without shouldering anything. Yeah. And it's just not right. There's a lot of kids that depend upon these programs to survive. Survive.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for hearing all our comments and concerns. I have a very specific question, actually. Do you know what McCaskill's position is on what the super committee has recommended so far? I mean, is she going to be in favor of the huge cuts to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid that they have suggested so far, and the minuscule increase in revenue? Do you have any idea what her thoughts are on that? If she's going to, what kind of recommendations she's going to support, and which ones she would not?
At this point, we are all waiting to see what the super committee is going to report out. It's unclear that they're going to come up with a deal at this point. So she hasn't said, she's, obviously, she stood up there with Durbin and when they had their press conference this week, and so she's in line with many of the things that you are fighting for. She is willing to go home and not be reelected if she cannot protect those in need as far as the programs like Social Security, Medicare, et cetera, et cetera.
I'd like to just raise a little more our concerns on military spending. And I think it's good to hear you say that she's called for a $29 billion cut in military spending. I don't know if that was in 1 year or, excuse me? Yeah, I said 29 billion, but I don't know if that was in 1 year or over a multi-year period. Often we get these things spread out over many years and they become pretty minuscule. The point of fact is that currently, overall military and related security spending, this includes all the budgets that are the Department of Energy's nuclear weapons budget, the NASA budget that's for militarization of space. You add in the black budget, the stuff that's off the books or that we don't know about in detail, but we know it's there, and all the other costs of current and past wars, and we're looking at close to $1 trillion a year. That's $1,000 billion per year that we are shouldering. Even though the U.S. population is only 4.5% of the world's people, we're shouldering about half the world's military expenditures each year, and this involves maintaining an elaborate network of, according to most calculations, somewhere between 850 and 1,250 bases on foreign soil around the world. It involves spending upwards of $50 billion each and every year on nuclear weapons that we don't need to be spending on. It involves building new nuclear weapons plants in New Mexico, Tennessee, and here in Missouri and Kansas City. All of these being expenditures that are not making us more secure. We here, I think, probably include a variety of viewpoints, but I think most of us are not opposed to maintaining a level of force that is defensive for our country. That's, I know there's some pacifists who would just not want to spend a dime on military spending, but most of the groups here are not in that camp. We mostly feel that it's okay to have national defense, but the difference between national defense and our current military is our current military is overseeing a global imperial project that involves having the military on every continent, on every sea, in the skies, and it's phenomenally expensive. And unfortunately, we have not at this point seen Senator McCaskill speak out for changing the role of the U.S. military fundamentally. And that kind of a fundamental change could save, in and of itself, $4 trillion over the next decade. Because we could cut $400 billion a year out of the U.S. military budget and still be spending far more than any other country in the world is spending on their military. And we're not starting to talk about doing that. And the $29 billion, while we applaud cuts and waste and such in the U.S. military spending, it's nowhere near enough. And that's part of the message we would love Senator McCaskill to come out of this with, is that there are people who've looked rationally at what the use of the U.S. military is and recognized that right around the time that we changed the name from the War Department to the Defense Department, we changed the mission from defense to offense and control and domination. And that control and domination has been a very costly thing that's being shouldered by the American people for more than 6 decades now. And it's time for that to stop. It's time for us to assume a place in the world of a modest country, not a global dominator.
Yeah!
So just one thing that Ruth touched on earlier is that really the majority of the American public is behind the issues we've talked about today. And you just said, you know, Claire is willing to come back home and stand up for these issues and risk not being elected. And I feel so strongly, and I know all of us here agree, and you know, 60-70%, depending on what issue you're talking about, cutting military spending, ending the wars, protecting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, generating revenue by ending the tax cuts and cutting corporate tax loopholes. The American people agree on this issue. Republican, Democrat, across age, different genders, different backgrounds. So we'll have her back. We need a champion, and she doesn't have to risk. If she comes out strong on these issues, she's not risking not being reelected. She's putting herself in a better position.
Is there anybody who's been waiting to speak and would like to get in on this? David?
I realize this isn't a partisan thing, but I have rung doorbells for Claire, and I will again. But I want to have my heart in it, and I don't want it to be because there's some scoundrel that she's running against. I really want to believe in the kind of things that she represents us for, and to keep as long an arm as she can from the bankers, from the coal interests, from those who pull the wool over our eyes about nuclear power. So I want to believe in your boss. She works for us too, and I want her to get reelected, but I want it to be on the right things.
Are there others who'd like to either ask a question or make a statement to anybody?
Thank you.
We do thank you for coming out and visiting with us out here. We're really blessed we had such a beautiful day to do this and not have to do this in the rain or the really cold. So thank you. And enjoy the cake. Save a piece in the fridge for Claire when she comes back to the state. And remind her that heart and courage have the same root. Liqueur, the heart, is where our courage comes from, and we want to see that.